Мамулечка, давай, надо сваливать отсюда.
The first powerful explosions since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine took place in the temporarily occupied Crimea on August 9th last year. The incident occurred at the Saki military airfield in Novofedorivka. The airbase was actively used to attack Ukraine, in particular in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. Then powerful explosions were recorded in Bakhchisarai, in Sevastopol, the Belbek airfield, in Yevpatoria and Saki. An explosion thundered on one of the most protected, according to Putin, strategic facilities on the peninsula on October 8th on the Crimean bridge. The Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation called the explosions on the Crimean bridge a terrorist act organized by the Ukrainian Special Services. In turn, Ukraine has not officially confirmed its involvement in the events on the peninsula. However, commenting on the situation, the head of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, said that everything had started in Crimea in 2014 and would end there. Military bases in Russia and in temporarily occupied Crimea are legitimate targets for the armed forces of Ukraine. This was stated by Under-Secretary of State for Political Affairs of the United States Victoria Nuland during a speech at the Carnegie Washington Center.
No matter what the Ukrainians decide about Crimea in terms of where they choose to fight, etc., Ukraine is not going to be safe unless Crimea is at a minimum demilitarized. This should be part of a sustainable containment, but the Ukrainians still need to get back the vast territories they need to be a viable state before there is any talk of Crimea, and that's what they are focusing on right now. Victoria Nuland, Under-Secretary of State for Political Affairs of the United States, during a speech at the Carnegie Washington Center.
In response, on February 17th, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said that U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland's comments about Washington's support for the Ukrainian attacks on Crimea showed that the United States was involved in the conflict.
It is just an incitement that has lasted for years and has now moved into the phase of open appeals. It is clear that the mention of a certain military infrastructure in Nuland's speech is nothing more than an attempt to cover up their desire for our defeat, which they all dream about.
Amid the supply of new types of weapons for Ukraine and the training of military personnel of the armed forces of Ukraine in the EU countries, the Russians are deploying new units to the north of the Crimean peninsula, experts say. Defense structures are being built there and on the coast. According to them, the Kremlin is already preparing for defense, realizing the inevitability of the occupation by Ukraine. They are carrying out a set of measures to prepare Crimea for hostilities, preparing not only the territory of Crimea itself, but also the territory contiguous to the peninsula from the side of the mainland. Bomb shelters are being upgraded on the peninsula. At least they try to do so. This is declared, but we cannot evaluate these events in reality. They can allocate money, resources, plunder them, but not renewing the shelters. Meanwhile, Ukraine is already preparing for the organization of governance after the deoccupation of Crimea. According to the representative of the President of Ukraine in Crimea, Tamila Tasheva, for the work of the state apparatus after the deoccupation of the peninsula, it will be necessary to attract up to 50,000 people, a significant part of whom should be recruited from the territory controlled by Ukraine.
But we have to take into account that for 9 years, the occupation's so-called judicial structures in Crimea have considered more than 1 million civil and more than 100,000 criminal cases. We cannot pretend that nothing happened and start with a clean slate. We need to verify all of them, find out what they influenced, whether the rights of our citizens need protection from such decisions or anything. This requires people, resources, and a regulatory framework.
Over the past 9 years, the Russian Federation has turned the temporarily occupied peninsula into a military base, so its territories, including the port in Sevastopol, where the Russian Black Sea Fleet is based, are considered by Western diplomats as the biggest flashpoint of a full-scale war. According to the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, the liberation of the Crimean peninsula from Russian occupation is only a matter of time. Moreover, after the discovery of war crimes committed by Russia on the territory of Ukraine, the mood of the local population in Crimea began to change. We can state that the large-scale war of Russia against Ukraine and the events connected with it on the territory of the peninsula gave rise to the understanding that hostilities could also take place in Crimea. This is a very real scenario for the development of events. As practice shows, the so-called Kerch Bridge is not very strong, which means it is not eternal. Vadim Skibitsky, deputy head of the main Directorate of Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, in an interview with Army Inform. According to Vadim Skibitsky, after the restoration of the territorial integrity of Ukraine, a set of necessary programs will be implemented in Crimea to restore normal and safe life there, and the Crimean peninsula will again become a popular Ukrainian resort. Reported by Pavel Stelmach, Victoria Sinko, UATV News.